"What's your biggest family secret?" "My mother died when I was 9. That is what I was told, and I believed it for 11 years. My father said she got sick very fast, that the end came in a hospital room no child should have to see, and that it was better for me to remember her the way she was on good days. There was a small gathering at our apartment after. Folding chairs, a casserole dish nobody ever came back to claim, my aunt crying in the hallway with her shoes still on. I wore a shirt with a collar that itched, and I sat on the arm of the couch because there was nowhere else for a kid to sit. After that, it was just my father and me. He never dated. He never remarried. He worked doubles at a parts warehouse and came home smelling like cardboard and cold air, and he made dinner anyway, and he sat at the counter with me while I did homework even when his eyes were closing. When I was 10, he took me to a corner of a cemetery where he had set a small flat marker, not a real headstone, just something simple, and I pulled dandelions out of the grass and laid them on the ground and told her about school. I did that every year until I was 17. He stood behind me with his hands in his pockets and he never said a word. Growing up, being the kid whose mother died meant teachers looked at me a certain way, and other parents lowered their voices around me at school events, and I learned early that if I mentioned it, people would get uncomfortable, so I stopped mentioning it. I built an entire personality around a loss that never happened. Every Mother's Day, I sat in the classroom making a card for nobody. Every time a friend complained about their mom, I got quiet and they apologized to me for it. That grief was not decoration. It was load-bearing. It shaped how I dated, how I said goodbye to people at airports, how I could not fall asleep unless I heard my father moving around the apartment first. Then I turned 20, and I needed her birth certificate for a background check at a job, and my father said his copy was lost years ago, so I drove to the county records office myself on a Thursday afternoon. While I was standing at the window, I figured I might as well request her death certificate too, because I had never actually seen it. The clerk typed, then she typed again, then she went in the back and came out with a supervisor, and the supervisor asked me to spell the name 3 different ways, and finally she looked at me over the counter and said there was no death record for my mother in that county, that state, or any state in the index under any spelling. I said that had to be a mistake. She printed me a certified letter that said no record found and slid it under the glass, and I stood in the parking lot holding it for 20 minutes because my legs would not agree to walk. It took me 6 weeks to find her. Her name was Cora, and she was alive in Arizona, married to a man named Roy, living in a house with white shutters and flower beds and a welcome mat. In every photo she looked healthy and comfortable and fine. She had not died of anything. She had walked out when I was 9 and let my father tell me whatever he needed to tell me. When I confronted him, he sat down on the edge of his bed and put his face in his hands and stayed like that for a long time. He said she left for no one and nothing in particular, that she told him to say whatever he wanted, and that he could not look at a 9-year-old boy and tell him his mother chose to go. He said the lie was supposed to be temporary. He said he meant to fix it every year, and every year he found a reason not to. I was angry at him for about a month. Then I stopped because he was the one who stayed. He was the one who packed lunches and sat at the counter and stood behind me in the cemetery holding a lie in his chest so I would not have to hold a worse truth. I saved my anger for the person who left. I called her on a Sunday. I expected crying. I expected an explanation. What I got, first sentence was, "How did you even find me? I have a whole life here now. Not I missed you. Not I'm sorry. Just alarmed that the door had been opened." I asked her how she could let me think she was dead. She said, "I needed to start over. You were young. You bounced back. Look at you. You turned out fine." I asked if she ever thought about me. She said, "Of course, but thinking about it made me sad, so I stopped." When I told her my father never dated again, she said, "That was his choice. Don't put his sad life on me." When I mentioned the gathering, the folding chairs, the marker in the grass, she made a small sound that was almost a laugh and said, "Grief ends faster than gossip." Then she got to the part she actually called about, except she had not called. I had, and she still managed to make it her meeting. She said, "Roy doesn't know about any of this. Everyone here believes I never had children, so I need you to respect that." Then she offered me money. She said she could send me something every month if I let her keep her peace. She wanted to pay me to stay dead the way she had pretended to be. I told her I would not take her money and I would not lie for her, and if the truth ever came up on its own, I would not cover it. She said, "You're being selfish. You want to ruin what I built." I told her I did not build it. 4 months later, it came apart without me. Roy had a daughter from his first marriage named Nina, and Nina had spent years noticing that Cora's past did not hold together. Wrong high school, in the wrong town. A childhood house described in a way that matched nothing. Nina pulled one thread and the whole coat came off. When Roy learned that his wife had a living son she had abandoned, that she had let a child grieve her for over a decade, he did not see the woman he thought he had married. Cora called me screaming that I had destroyed her marriage. I told her I had never spoken to a single person in her life. She said, "You could have protected me." I told her she used up her protection the day she let my father say she was in the ground. She hung up. I thought that was the end of it until a letter arrived from Arizona a month later, and it was not from her. It was from Roy. He wrote that his wife had given him a dozen versions of the truth since Nina found the records, and that he no longer knew which version of Cora was real. He asked me to come out, not to fight, just to sit across from him and answer questions, because I was the only person left who had nothing to gain by lying. My father told me not to go. He said she would find a way to make me the villain. I booked the flight anyway, and I brought a folder. Arizona hit me with dry heat the second the airport doors opened, and I remember thinking that of course she ran somewhere that looked nothing like the life she left. Roy met me at a diner off the main road, the kind of place where everything comes with hash browns. He was late 50s, broad through the shoulders, the sort of man who fixes things on weekends. His grip was firm, and his eyes were exhausted, not angry, just the tired that comes from lying awake reviewing 10 years of memories for the parts that were never true. He said, "She told me her whole family died in a fire when she was young. That is why she never talked about her past." I felt sorry for her for 10 years. He said it flat, like a man reading an inventory. I slid the one photo I had across the table, her holding me on her hip outside our old apartment when I was maybe 2. He held it a long time and did not say anything, and his jaw kept working on words that would not come out. Then he asked when she left. 9, I said. He asked if she said goodbye. "No," I said. I came home from school and my father sat me on the couch. Roy closed his eyes. He said, "She did not just lie to me. She made me apologize for asking. Every time I brought up her past, she cried, and I ended up saying sorry to my own wife for wanting to know who she was. That landed in me sideways because it was the same move she had run on me over the phone. She does not only lie, she makes you feel cruel for noticing. Roy said that since the records came out, she had produced a new story every few days, that I was unstable, that my father Hubert had poisoned me against her, that she had run because Hubert frightened her. Then he leaned forward and asked the question he had clearly been holding all morning. He asked if there was any chance my father had kept her away. I understood it. He was looking for one last door where his wife might still be a victim. I told him the truth. I said my father cried at a gathering for her, raised me alone for 11 years, and never once said her name without his voice going wrong. I said she never came back, never called, never wrote. I watched a door close behind his eyes, quietly, the way doors close when nobody slams them. Then he told me she wanted a dinner, all of us, to clear the air. I almost laughed. The night before it, Nina called me. Her voice was quick, like she had been waiting for a window. She said she was the one who started digging, and she was not sorry. Then she told me two things. Cora had been coaching Roy in the house, telling him to let her speak first because I would try to make her look like a monster. And Cora had been walking the neighborhood for weeks, telling people that her estranged son had been harassing her, that I was troubled, that I had shown up out of nowhere making demands. She was building a story about me before I had said one word to anyone. Nina said the small things had been adding up for years. Cora would name the town she supposedly grew up in and then get the high school wrong. She described a childhood house that matched nothing in that county. Once Nina asked her a plain question about her parents and Cora's eyes filled up so fast that Roy told Nina to drop it, and Nina dropped it. And she said the thing that stuck with me was how efficient the crying was. It arrived exactly when a question got specific, and it stopped exactly when the question went away. Nina said, I thought maybe she was in witness protection. I never imagined she just left a kid behind. Then Nina said Cora had invited a couple from down the street to the dinner. Nina said it plainly. She is bringing an audience. She wants witnesses. I sat on a hotel bed with the air conditioning humming and understood exactly what was being set up. Not a family dinner, a room with a jury already selected. If I came in hot, if I raised my voice even once, those neighbors would see precisely what they had been told to expect, and Cora would cry, and they would comfort her, and the performance would be louder than any fact I brought. So I called my father. Hubert picked up on the first ring. He said, I should have told you when you were old enough. I thought the lie would hurt less than the truth. It only delayed it. Then he said the thing I wrote down on the hotel notepad word for word. He said, don't let her make you feel small. She is very good at making people feel greedy for wanting the bare minimum. After that, I changed my plan. I was not going to accuse her of anything. I was going to ask short questions in front of people who had heard different answers, and I was going to open the folder only when she made me. Her house was nicer in person. White shutters, flower beds, a welcome mat with something cheerful on it. I sat in the rental car for 10 minutes thinking about our old apartment with the thin walls. Then I went in. Roy was standing in the front hall like he had been posted there. The neighbor couple was already on the couch, mid-50s, comfortable, glasses in hand. The woman smiled at me the way you smile at a problem you have been briefed on and said, Cora told us you've had a rough time. It's good for families to talk things through. That one sentence showed me the whole frame. She had not told them her abandoned son was coming. She had told them she was generously opening her home to a troubled young relative. I smiled and said nothing and sat where Roy pointed. Cora came out a few minutes later with a dish towel over her shoulder, hair done, soft blouse, the careful put together of someone who knows she is about to be watched. She hugged me the way you hug someone at a store when other people are looking. She held my shoulders and said, I'm so glad you came. I've wanted this conversation for a long time. She was good. If I had not heard her first sentence on the phone 4 months earlier, I might have believed her. We moved to the dining room. Real plates, cloth napkins, candles. Roy at one end, Cora at the other, Nina at the far side saying nothing, the neighbors across from me. After the compliments about the food, Cora set her fork down and steered. She said, I want to be open because that's what family does. Then she told them she had been very young, that the relationship had been difficult, that she made the painful decision to let his father raise him because she was not in a good place. Her voice cracked exactly on time. The neighbor woman reached over and squeezed her hand. I ate. I chewed slowly. I let her finish, and when the room turned to me, I set my fork down and said, in the calmest voice I had, can I ask you something, Mom? There was a flinch when I said Mom. Small, fast, gone. I said, if it was so hard, why did you tell Dad to say you were dead? The air went out of the room. The neighbor woman's hand froze on top of Cora's. The neighbor man stopped chewing. Cora blinked twice, and I could watch her scanning versions for the one that fit this audience. She said, that's not exactly what happened. I said, then what happened? Dad held a gathering. People brought food. I was 9 and I cried at my mother's memorial. Was that not real? The neighbor woman drew her hand back into her own lap. Cora straightened and said, your father exaggerated things. I told him I was leaving. Whatever he did after that was his choice. She said it like a memorial for a living woman was a clerical overreaction. Then she went where people go when the truth gets close. She pointed. She said Hubert had been possessive, controlling, that she had been afraid of what he would do if she ever came back, and she put just enough tremble in it to sell bravery. My blood came up. She was describing the man who packed my lunches and worked doubles for my school shoes, but I heard my father's voice in my head, so I kept my volume where it was and said, Dad never dated again. He never raised his voice at me. You're describing someone I have never met. Roy lifted his head for the first time all night and said, you told me the same thing, that your past was dangerous, that people had hurt you. Was any of it true? Cora did not answer him. She pushed her chair back hard enough to scrape the floor, put her hands flat on the table and said, I don't have to be interrogated in my own home. I invited you here to make peace and you turned it into a trial. That is when I opened the folder. I did not stand. I did not raise my voice. I laid 3 pages on the table between the candles and turned them so the neighbors could read them right side up. The first was the certified letter from the county, the one the clerk printed for me in that parking lot, stating on official paper that no death record existed for her in any index under any spelling. The second was a certified search from the same office showing no divorce was ever filed between Hubert and Cora in that county or any other, which meant that the marriage she had been living inside for 10 years in Arizona had never legally begun. The third was a single sheet of notebook paper paper in her handwriting, dated the week she left, which my father had kept in a shoebox for 11 years. It was 4 lines long. It told him to tell the boy whatever he wanted, that she was not coming back, and that she would not be contacting anyone. Her name was signed at the bottom in the same loops that were on the birthday cards I still had in a drawer at home. Roy picked up the second page. He read it 3 times. Nina leaned over and read it with him. The neighbor man put on his glasses, read the first page, and set his napkin down on the table. Not folded, just set down, the way a man does when he is finished with more than dinner. Cora said, "Those don't prove anything." I said, "They prove there is no version of this where you were escaping something. There's no death, there's no divorce. There's a note telling my father to lie to me in your handwriting." She had spent 10 years building a woman out of stories, and stories only work when nobody puts paper next to them. Roy asked me where the second page came from. I told him I had requested it the same week I requested the first one, that it cost $11, that any adult with a name and a date could have walked into an office and gotten it at any point in 10 years. That was the part that took the floor out from under him. Not that the document existed, that it had been sitting there the whole time, cheap and public, waiting for one person to ask. He turned the page over like there might be something on the back. There was nothing on the back. That was the point. The neighbor couple stood up. They did not say goodbye or thank her for dinner. The woman took her purse off the back of her chair, and the man pushed his chair in, and the front door opened and closed quietly, and nobody at the table watched them go. Roy stood with his hands on the back of his chair and said, "10 years. I held you while you cried about a fire." I told Nina to stop asking questions because I didn't want to upset you. Cora said she had been grieving the person she used to be. Roy shook his head and said, "Grieving people don't lie about dead children." Then he said he was going to stay at his brother's, that he did not know if there was an us after this, and he walked out. Not a slam, just a click. The click was worse. Nina stood up next. She looked at Cora and said, "I felt sorry for you for years. You let me." Then she turned to me and said, "I'm glad you came. You deserve to be in this room." And she left too. Then it was just the two of us, the candles burning low, the clock going, the hum of a refrigerator in the next room. Cora's face was hard now, not sad. She said, "So now what? Everyone knows. Roy is leaving. Are you satisfied?" I said I had not called Roy, had not contacted Nina, had not told the neighbors anything, that I flew out because a man I had never met asked me for the truth, and everything that happened tonight happened because of her lies, not my honesty. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "You sound just like your father." She meant it as a wound. I said, "Good." Then her whole posture changed. She leaned in, softened her eyes, tilted her head and said, "What if I came back? What if I tried to be part of your life now? Would you let me?" It was the best performance of the night, and I could see exactly what it was, because Roy was gone, Nina was gone, the neighbors were gone, and the sweet woman with the sad past no longer existed on this street. She was not looking at a son. She was looking at a lifeboat, somewhere to land, somewhere to start over, using me as the foundation this time instead of my grave. I said, "You want to come back because everyone here just saw who you are and you need somewhere to go. That isn't wanting to be my mom, that's wanting an exit." The softness dropped off her face all at once. She said, "That is not fair." I said, "Neither is a 9-year-old putting dandelions on a marker with nothing under it." She had no answer for that. She looked at the 3 pages still lying between the candles, and she did not touch them, and I understood that she had never once in 10 years considered that a county clerk could end her. She had planned for me. She had planned for Nina. She had planned for a room and an audience and a story with tears in the right places. She had never planned for a filing cabinet. I thought about the clerk who printed that first letter for me and slid it under the glass without knowing what she was handing over, and how the whole thing came apart because a woman at a window typed a name 3 ways and got nothing back. I pushed my chair back and stood. I told her I spent 11 years missing her and 1 year being angry at her, and that sitting in her dining room I did not feel either one anymore. I said I just felt done. I walked down the hall and my shoes were loud on the floor, and behind me her voice came out smaller than I had ever heard it. She said, "So that's it? You fly home and I never hear from you again?" I stopped in the doorway of the house she built on top of my grave, and I said, "Now you know what that feels like." Outside the air was warm and dry. I walked past the flower beds and the welcome mat and got into the rental car and sat there with my hands on the wheel, not shaking, not crying, just breathing. I called my father. Hubert picked up on the first ring, the way he always waited, the way he waited when I was late in high school, the way he waited by the phone the night I flew out. I said, "Hey Dad, I'm coming home." There was a short pause. Then he said, "Good, I'll leave the light on." I put the car in reverse. In the mirror, a woman standing in a lit doorway, getting smaller, and I did not slow down.